Good afternoon, everybody. Call this meeting to order. It's approximately 3:01 on February 1st, 2022 at 3. Yes, we have to remember the date there for sure, Murph. In the council chambers at the municipal office of Bonaire Valley. Are there any additions to the agenda? Murph?
No.
Brent?
Nope.
Jack?
No, none.
Mayor Murphy?
So thank you, Chair, and I just want to acknowledge that I'm on Zoom, just because you said we were in the council chambers and I am not. I apologize. I've really done a number on my back, so I felt it was easier just to use the heating pad here. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm going to add 2 items to our agenda. Number 8 being a thank you to the Bonaire Valley residents. And number 9, a discussion of the end name for restrictions, if we can do up a letter for our Premier and our Prime Minister. Can I get a confirmation of the agenda as amended? Jack, all in favor? Is there any pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Yes, Murph.
At the last meeting, if you recall, I was concerned because I own lakefront property that I may be in conflict with the RV bylaw we're attempting to pass. I've since spoken with our lawyer, Tony Fleming.
Yes.
And he assures me that I'm not in conflict and he'll put it in writing. And if you'd like a copy from your file for me, I'll give it to you then. Just in case anybody raises it.
Your word is good with us.
I shall have it in writing as well.
Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes from January 18th, 2022? Can I get an approval? Brent, all in favor? And today we do have a delegation, and I'd like to welcome Bruce Howarth from the County of Renfrew. He's the manager of planning, and he's going to assist us today in our discussion with an ETS report. So with that, I'm going to let you give your report there, Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last meeting, we did discuss some options for the zoning, the comprehensive zoning bylaw around the use and provisions for RV, the zones, things like that. And Bruce was here to present that as our planner, and council did discuss the different options after he had left the meeting, and we were going to come back today with a report and discuss the direction that council wanted staff to report back on for further discussion. So in my report, the recommendation from staff is that the committee direct staff to work with the County of Renfrew planning staff to include the following provisions in the draft comprehensive zoning bylaw before bringing it back to council for a preliminary review. We still have quite the process to go through, public consultations and lots of other things to review in the zoning bylaw. But in order to move forward and to get at least a first draft ready for staff and council to look at, needed some decisions on this issue moving forward. Well, not decisions because they won't be implemented, but some direction in moving forward for a draft for what council would be looking at. So the first thing would be to amend the definitions so that the definition of an RV is the same as a trailer, and that this definition match and is consistent with the definition found in the Municipal Act. Add tiny homes to this definition with similar provisions, because that's definitely something that is out there and prominent, and people are having these mobile tiny homes. Add a section regarding the use of RVs for special events, because you might have a situation, this is something that came out of our staff meeting that we had, where you could have a situation where somebody's having a family reunion or a big wedding or something, and they're just having them on their property literally for one day or one weekend or whichever. So that might be an option that we didn't discuss yet that could come up. So have something done, and we do have a special events bylaw, so we can look at that. It may need some updates as well, but look at doing it with the provisions under the special events bylaw. Add a provision for the use of RVs, both as permanent structures and as temporary accommodation, because I think that's been a real challenge for the residents and for council. You know, what are these and where are they and what are they being used for? And you know, should there be different provisions for the two different types? So that was something that was outlined in Bruce's report and reviewed by council. So the background is there of the review of the report. I won't get too much into that other than to outline sort of what was in Bruce's report and what was discussed at council, which is the permanent structure, which is allowing an RV or a trailer to be permanently installed. So we would be allowing them. However, we need to consider, you know, location, setbacks, certain zones, because they would be, we're talking about them being there permanently and being used all the time, all year round. So those are some of the discussions, as well as servicing and density. So how many are we allowing? So if we permit, let's say one that's there all the time, all year round, because it is similar to a dwelling, whether you're calling it, you know, a tiny home or it's an RV or it's a trailer, if it is being used all year round as accommodation, it is just like a home, like it's like a home, but it's not exactly the same. And so we would be permitting that one on these properties. And of course, they would have to have septic, they'd have to have water, wastewater servicing, all of that kind of stuff, because they are being used as a permanent type of dwelling. That's their use, that's what they're using them for. Now, that's not every situation, of course, that's just the ones that are being used permanent. Then there would be special occasions where people do have more than one on their property. So you could have like, they're not permitted as secondary dwellings, but you could have something called a granny suite where I have older in-laws or I have somebody that I want to take care of on my property for a temporary basis. And so I'm going to have a permanent structure on my lot, which also has a dwelling. So it's not just going to be on a vacant lot. This is going to be under our temporary use bylaw. So it's not permitted in the zoning, but it's something that people could have a special agreement with council to say, listen, I have a special need. Here's what's happening. The maximum time period for that is 20 years and it has to be a specific person and that kind of thing. The other thing that could be looked at is a minor variance application for properties that, so it's a vacant property, wants to have a permanent RV on it, not a problem. Well, it's a big property, you know, it's 15 acres. So we want to have 2 or we want to have 3. Okay, so that's, you know, we need to look at that now. We need to look at that on a case-by-case basis and say, does that make sense? Does it make sense for the environment? Does it make sense for the neighborhood? That kind of thing. And then council can make decisions on those at a case-by-case basis. So I think that does prevent restricting where council doesn't want to restrict, where council's saying, no, you know what, this makes sense. But it also doesn't allow everybody to do it because we know that in some circumstances, it doesn't make sense. And so if we allow everybody to do it, as opposed to just looking on a case-by-case basis, we could get ourselves into a situation where we're like, well, everybody can do it except you. And it's easier to do it as, well, everyone can do this level, but if you want to go to the next level, we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. So that's easier to enforce and it's easier to administer. The next part was temporary use. Did I miss anything on the permanent use, Bruce? I'll just check with you. No. Temporary use of RVs. So that's something that's different. And that's something where it's not a structure, it's not a dwelling, it's not being used 365 days a year. It probably doesn't have its own source of water and wastewater and that kind of thing, right? So we want to have something separate for people who just want to, you know, vacation on their lot or have guests come and stay for a certain period of time. So this would, again, allow that. And we're looking at allowing, again, the one on the property with the dwelling. So where if it's permanent, you can't have a dwelling. And if you do have a dwelling, then that has to be done through a temporary use, not through the zoning bylaw. These would be not vacant properties. So properties that have a dwelling, and where do we want to have them? Where, like, are they going to be across the township? Wherever you are, you can have a temporary RV pull up for how many days? When does it become a stored RV? When is it in use? So how many days and what's going to be used around that? And again, looking at if we allow one, then people can have one and that doesn't cause issues. So the questions would be like, how many days a year could it be occupied? Does it have to comply with setbacks and stuff in certain areas? Or is it good to go because it's not a permanent structure and it's not being used all of the time? Another thing would be if you wanted to have more than one. So, you know, what kind of property do you have? how many acres do you have? How, you know, what's your setup? What's the neighborhood? So, you know, you don't really want somebody in the village, I guess, that has, you know, 2 and 3 and 4. So you have a big driveway, but it's got all these RVs, and, you know, how long are those people staying there? So things like that. So if we allow people to have one on their property with their dwelling for a certain period of time a year, temporary use, you know, that shouldn't be too difficult to implement in all the different zones. But if you wanted to have something else, if it was a special event, you could do that. If you wanted to have 2 or 3 because you have 2 or 3 kids, but you have, like I said, 15 acres or whatever, you've got lots of room, lots of setbacks. It really shouldn't be causing an issue with your neighbors. You know, you're not blocking them in and having them all lined up right against the lot line or stuff like that. Then we would look at that on a case-by-case basis. So we're not restricting, we're saying, okay, if you can meet these certain things, then we'll consider that, because we don't want to restrict people where we don't have to, but we also don't want to leave it open so that we can enforce it and we see a situation where we're like, this, I can understand why your neighbor's not happy about this. It's not really the best ideal, but you know, so leave it, it's approved at this level, but if you want to go up a level, we just want to make sure that that suits the neighborhood and where you are, but we also don't want to leave it so that people don't have the opportunity and are completely restricted when it doesn't make sense. I think council wants to have common sense and deal with these things, you know, where this is the level that's acceptable for everybody, but there are options for people so that we're not restricting those that we think common sense prevails, and there's an opportunity there for you to have more or have a different type of structure, whether it's temporary, whether it's, you know, special events, whether it's permanent, that sort of thing. So those were sort of what the discussion we wanted to have today. And that's why we asked Bruce to come back, because, you know, council may say, well, what about this? What about that? And I would like a planning perspective on that so that, you know, we can get some sort of sense of moving forward to give direction to have something dropped up. Again, not looking for council to 100% make decisions today, just looking for some direction so that we can get moving forward with our draft bylaw and keep this process going. So eventually we can get our zoning bylaw passed sooner rather than later. I don't know if there's any questions or I missed anything on the temporary area of uses.
This might be a little far out than that, but maybe you just use an example that you have a cottage, vacant lot next door. I pull in my trailer for the weekend or whatever, for summer holidays. And for power, I've got a generator. Do you want to listen to that generator barking all weekend? You know, I know we have a noise bylaw, 11 o'clock.
That's right. That's right.
But,
So,
you know,
yeah.
I wonder if there's anything, maybe we can't do anything about that, but.
Can I talk about that or
Yeah.
add to that? Murph, we do have noise bylaws for certain hours of the day.
Yeah.
And the thing is, people cut grass,
I know,
people use chainsaws, people have lots of gas powered motors. And with today's whisper quiet generators, you know yourself, Murph,
Yeah.
there's not a whole pile of those loud barking Colemans from 1955 out there still running.
I should have.
Yes, but
I know.
it's definitely the minority out there.
I
And
know.
I really don't want to go down that rabbit hole because you'd have to eliminate so much others in
Yeah, I
that
know.
same
I know. That's
stroke of the
that's
pen. That's the only thing when you start restricting that. And you know, and the reason why I'm even commenting on it is one individual from Constant Lake had asked me about that as well. And I said, there's too many possibilities of adding to more with that type of regulation. That's all. Jack?
Just one question I have. When we were reviewing this, we mentioned to you if anything could be done about the 30-day limit. Is that firm fast or is that something that can be revisited with yourself and Bruce or?
So that can be revisited. It doesn't have to be 30 days, but it can't go, like you can't have it so that it's there like from May to November. Sorry. The trailer itself could probably be there from May to November, but it can't be occupied full time. So let's say people are just coming down on weekends, you know, that could be something. Or if people are staying for, you know, the month of July and a couple long weekends, that could probably work. But it can't be like somebody's there all the time.
So with
Yeah.
that issue though, how do you? There's no regulation in that whatsoever, because you can't prove that someone has been somewhere for any length of time or not doing something for any length of time. And in reality, right, it's.
So we'd have to pick a timeline, and I think the maximum that we sort of said would be comfortable or be defendable through the Planning Act, Bruce, did we say 45 days would probably be the max? I don't even know that Bruce is 100% comfortable with the 45 days, but.
Maybe if I could jump in there, and so the whole point is trying to find what is a reasonable timeline that would work for the township and for the residents. And so the municipality does absolutely have some like flexibility in trying to draft provisions that will work for, you know, the township and its residents. And so some of the ideas that we were just like discussing as staff internally were, what is that appropriate timeline? Is it less than 30 days? Is it 30 days? Is it more than 30 days? But then also, does it make sense if it's concurrently or if there should be broken up? For example, if it's like, for example, for 45 days, that would essentially allow somebody to come in with a trailer and spend the vast majority of the summer month on a cottage lot temporarily. And whether or not that's a reasonable use for expecting for neighbors, whether that's acceptable or not, maybe not, might be too much. We also discussed maybe putting a cap on it, saying 45 days or 30 days during a calendar year is acceptable, but no more than 10 days at a time or 14 days at a time, for example, so that it's not all of us. And then, you know, we have our dwelling and then we also have the RV there. So this 30 days one is only for the temporary use. It's not for the permanent one. So this is I think it's another distinction to make. This is only talking about where somebody has a dwelling, existing dwelling, and then, you know, it's intended for temporary use for guests. So you have your in-laws coming over, or, you know, grandchildren visiting, or whatever that case is, where somebody's coming in temporarily to visit at that dwelling. And then how long is it reasonably expected to have that be set up there temporarily? So I think that's, the municipality does have some flexibility to come up with the provisions that will work for it, and what is reasonable expectations for your residents. So that was just some of the ideas, and I think we were just looking for direction from council at this time, how you'd like us to proceed. If you're comfortable with that 30 days, or if you feel 45 days is more appropriate, and then, but also whether or not you have a restriction on how many concurrent days in a row. So it could be, you know, 30 days in the calendar year, but no more than 10 days in a row, and then you can just break it up throughout the year.
Jack and then Jen.
So this 30 days then is something that the number that you guys picked, it's not a firm fixed day. It's something you pick to give us guidance or give us your recommendation. So if we wanted to go with 45 days and say 2 weeks full time, and then they'd be able to come in on every other weekend or use it or something, that would exceed the 30 days, but it still would be, you know, it'd still be, in my mind, that would still be seen as temporary use. It's not. So I just wanted to know where this 30 days come from. It's actually a number that yourself, Bruce, you and Annette came up with, right?
Yes, that's correct. So that we started that as like a conversation point. So that is not a number like based in the Planning Act. So the whole idea of this restriction, so right now the official plan has a restriction in it. You know, the policy is where there's an existing dwelling, you can't have a RV or trailer coming in as a secondary dwelling, or a permanent installation of like a secondary trailer. It can't be, so the idea of having it permanently there, like, or you're always installed, that is not in compliance with the official plan policy. And then so in through our discussions with staff, like, well, what is reasonable? You know, you have those guests coming over. You know, is it that so, you know, it's pretty reasonable, I think, to have a guest come in with an RV and stay at a cottage for a period of time, or your dwelling for a period of time. And then so it's, you know, what is that reasonable like time limit for both how many days throughout the year, and then also So that's our staff recommendation of where to start. That was our idea of what we thought would be reasonable to start the conversation. But ultimately, it is up to council to provide us with that direction of what you think is reasonable or the direction you'd like to go.
Okay,
Okay,
Jen, then
thank
Brent.
you.
Okay, Jen, go ahead.
Next one.
Thanks. So Bruce, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you believe that this is defendable? And what I'm hearing with this 30 days or 45 days, again, we're into enforcement and people are going to have to be on the honor system. And I don't want this to turn into some neighbor on neighbor fight. But I guess my biggest question is, do you feel that this would be defendable with the LPATs?
So absolutely. So there's multiple layers to that question as well, if I may. So whether it's so again, we're talking about just the temporary one. So yes, I think it is defensible at the LPAT. And with regards to the neighbor on neighbor, ultimately the township, and it's not unique to Blanchard Valley, but pretty much all rural areas and even the majority of like urban areas, a lot of bylaw enforcement is done by on a complaint basis. So if the township does not receive a complaint, if the bylaw officer is not circling the township, counting days on making sure the RV has been there the appropriate number of days. It's more to address the fact that if there is a issue or a neighbor has a problem with that RV there are clear requirements that the township has there that are enforceable. And so if there is a record saying, a resident has an issue saying my neighbor's brought in this RV, he's parked on the property line, it's been there for 60 days and I can't put up with it anymore. They're running the generator all day. The township has that authority and that, responsibility to make sure that that bylaw is enforced. But if a neighbor does not complain, then it's likely that the bylaw enforcement will not be out there and nobody will be the wiser at the end of the day. But ultimately, it is trying to again find that what is a reasonable use of property in the majority of situations. And so that's how bylaws get written. Like this is the reasonable use. And then as Ned mentioned, if there is a situation that it's reasonable to allow more than one or more than that base thing, then the council has the ability under the Planning Act through minor variances or through a zoning amendment to allow more or have a site-specific consideration based on that situation. So it's the base bylaw is there to say this is what is reasonable for the most people within the township, and then you have the ability to tailor it on site-specific basis through the review of those minor variances.
Okay, Brent?
One of my questions was just on for the temporary use. In number E, it says setbacks also not an issue of temporary, but would have to meet storage and parking requirements. So I guess that was in relation to other, so for setbacks from, but in the other section, it says from environmental. So is that setbacks to the property lines you're discussing? Is it temporary or is it setbacks towards, say, lakefront or?
It's true, Chair. So yeah, these are all brand new provisions that we are trying to implement at this time, right? So this is something that hasn't really been done before. So we're trying to consider all the different scenarios or situations that the township or questions that the township could have. So in the bylaw, there are the way we have it drafted right now. So maybe back up a little bit. So as we're going through the comprehensive update for the township, we're drafting all these brand new provisions. And so far we've met as staff, one of county with township staff to review our first draft and saying, does this sound reasonable? Are we on the right page? Is this the direction that you think the township is going to want to go through? And here, these are some of the questions that we had that we were looking for council to give us more direction before we bring you that draft. So we're working on, in the background, we're working on this update for you guys. And before we even bring it to you at the table, we want to make sure, get some direction on some of these things, make sure we're on the same page or going in the right direction that the council is happy with. So the bylaw has, the way that's drafted right now, we differentiate between RVs being used basically on a temporary basis, being occupied on more of a permanent basis, and then in storage. And so we've recommended when it's in storage, different setbacks. I think it's 1.2 meters or something like that. You just make sure that it's set off the property line so somebody is not bringing in which is the same setback for an accessory building that you'd have, so that you're not, somebody's not bringing in a bunch of trailers and parking them right on the property line, which is often not appreciated. So, trying to establish those appropriate boundaries for where these things are permitted. So that would be one of the recommendations, probably, that if you're bringing in a trailer and you're occupying it when it's temporarily, so when it's temporarily occupied for that set amount of time, that it's not, right on the property line. So you're providing that space to your neighbor and that, that respect to your neighbor. So like for example, a 1.2 meter setback in my mind would be appropriate. So when, this trailer being occupied, it's not right on the property line. But
One thing, 1 second there, Merv. One thing I'd also like to know is if we do a provision of 30 days or 45 days, what's the, what would the, I'm asking for direction in a restart. So say if you were to, how long before the restart of that 45 days or 30 days of temporary use?
Calendar year.
Says
So
calendar.
within the calendar year, so that's it, that's all, and so January to January and that's it, or if we did.
as we have drafted it to date, again, we're open for suggestions or, direction from.
And those, of course, are the county's opinions, not, so we could do that within.
Right.
All open to adjustment then within, but because that's the thing is what I'm getting at. I wanted to establish where we could put the restart as well, because if you were, who knows, right? You were off for, we don't know what people's work times are in this day and age. They can have holidays in March, holidays in April and May, and I'm not saying anybody's going to be in their RV at that time, but you wanted to use some then and then some, I don't want to be, I want to be as open as possible, while still being respectful.
So no more than 30 days in a 6-month period would it be occupied? And you could pick those 30 days. If you wanted them to be every weekend for 6 months, fine. If you wanted them to be for a whole month, then you'd have to wait 6 months before you could be there for a whole month again.
And something along that line, and what got me going on it is, I drive a truck, right? And I have hours of service in which I follow. And I have to have a certain amount of off-duty hours before I can restart my 70-hour work week again. And, that has to be established, right? If we go down that route, I'm not saying that I'm supporting it yet. I definitely have to give it more time, but I also do want to know the options and what we can do as well. Brett?
I was just gonna say, like with like the regional use of like properties, just because we're a rural area, obviously, primarily. So I guess like with the regional use of like, say, temporary RVs on properties, be it like within the direction we have one, and then with the minor variance process, we could allot more, but within our actual, I guess, zoning bylaw, then would we be putting in like guiding principle per acre? Like, so for example, we're gonna continue to be getting questions on, okay, so right now, our understanding since the beginning, I guess, is really that we've always allowed up to 4 RVs and everything on property. So the question we're getting, we have a rural lens in our township. So I guess some form of guiding principle, because now we're gonna be asking individuals that say have multiple acres or 5 acres, 10 acres, 15, 20, 25, hundreds of acres, to be like, oh, now you have to put a minor variance in for those, say, 3 RVs that you have on your process. So I guess some form of guiding principle, just because we don't, a lot of lots say that do have recreational vehicles aren't just a standard, say, 0.25 an acre or 0.33 of an acre. A lot of them have large amounts. So I guess my curiosity would be what guiding principle or something we can put in saying like, these are standards up to, say, X amount of RVs, be it 4, or how many acres do you have to have 4? I guess my question.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead there.
So like I would say, going back to what Bruce said, it's reasonable use, right?
Yep.
Like what's reasonable? So I think you're looking at regular planning principles, you're looking at setbacks, you're looking at, diversity, you're looking at the neighborhood, and you're saying, okay, so how many, like you said, if you had 15 acres and you wanted to have 3 RVs, there's lots of room to place them. They're not on anybody's lot lines. They've got proper setbacks. They're only going to be used for the temporary use for the certain periods of time. So that might be something that, is going to work. I can't think of any other outstanding principles at this time, but I mean, to me, is that reasonable? So like the question then I would be asking, and I would certainly take guidance from Bruce to bring it to council to say, so does this sound reasonable from a planning perspective? Did I miss anything, Bruce?
No, and I'd also go back on that to further your point that there's a distinction between those RVs that are permanently installed versus just temporarily there. And it goes back, there's a couple of different options. So like, for example, where I think we're proposing, for a vacant property, you'd be allowed to have one RV that's permanently installed. The temporary one, that's where it's not a vacant property where you have an existing dwelling on it, or to allow one trailer temporarily to be used for a number of days a year or for a set amount of time. But then the other one is that, and that mentioned that we haven't really discussed either, is the special event. So this is for example, a person has a farm and they want to have a wedding and they want to have a big family reunion, or like a one-time sort of a short-term event where they bring in, there could be lots of people there. So the township does have a special event bylaw, and what we would propose is putting in a special provisions allowing these special events or one time or like not one time, but infrequent events to allow a special exception to the bylaw where they wouldn't have to come in for minor variances. But if somebody wanted to always have 3 temporary RV, on and off, I would suggest that would be better considered through a minor variance as opposed to allowing it as of right for every property in the township.
I believe Murph had a question.
I was just going to comment on a couple of things on the time restrictions. Looking at this scenario, so I've over the years purchased a lot, and now I'm retired. And by gosh, I'm going to spend the summer by the lake, and I can only spend 30 days. I think we should be able to spend June, July, and August, or something like 90 days. And what about storage? I can't take my trailer back to the city. I've got no room to store it. So what's wrong with leaving it on my property over winter?
So if you own a lot and it's a vacant lot and you have no dwelling there, then you can have your.
I'm talking about a vacant lot with no dwelling.
Well, then you can put your RV in permanently and you can be there all year round if you want.
It's a little different story if you have beside a residence or something like
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
No, permanent, you can put it there all year long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and now what I'd like to do at this question, Bruce, is kind of establish exemptions, our exemption point. Right now on Crown land in this area, you're allowed to camp for approximately 21 days or 21 days in a row consecutive, right? And there's no issues whatsoever. That's considered temporary. If we put something like that into our municipal bylaw, would that be acceptable? 21 days and that's considered temporary. We don't even want to know what you're doing in that length of time. Because that's what it's in the Crown, that's in a provincial. You're allowed to go to anywhere in Crown land in our area. You're allowed to set your trailer up and it's allowed to legally stay there for 21 days straight without having to move it. And would that be something we could use as a guideline, because the precedent is already set in the provincial, if we could follow that as well along that line. So there would be, and that would kind of take us out of this special events clause, Bruce, where we wouldn't have to worry, because if people showed up and it was gone within that 21 days, there's really no, because on a landing, and I've seen it in the bush when I haul logs, Bruce, okay? And they'll take up an old landing and they'll set 4 or 5 trailers up, right? And they camp there. With COVID over the last 2 years, people have been running out of things to do and they've been doing things along that line. And setting up, and as long as they're gone within 21 days, they're legally allowed to do it. So if we could have, would that be a too long of a request in your opinion?
So thank you for the question. And I would actually go back to one of the points that I think it was Councillor Patrick made about, again, you're a rural municipality and there's a lot of differences between throughout your whole landscape. You have, waterfront properties, you have environmentally protected areas, you have small, some properties are very small, under an acre. You have a variety of properties that are significantly larger, like up to hundreds of acres. And it's the municipality's job is to figure out from situations in the township, what is a reasonable use of private property. So crown land, you're dealing with large areas. You don't have neighbors. You don't have anything else. I don't think the same restrictions or policy that would be applicable to crown land should necessarily be applied to private land. And just trying to find that balance of what is reasonable for use. So for example, if somebody has a 1 acre piece of property, is reasonable use of that property saying, yeah, we're going to allow you to 4 trailers and use the property for 21 straight days. Is that something that the neighbors is reasonably expect to have that impact or that, that use right next to them? So that's the exercise that the township has to go through and say, for the majority of this property that we have in our township, what is that reasonable use?
But the thing is, Bruce, what I'm trying to establish is I don't want to cut it too short either, right? And that's the thing. And we're under a month, and in the LPATs, this would be a somewhat of a restriction, right, onto it, because if it's under that timeline, we know that they're just temporary. They're not leaving them there all summer, is what I'm getting at. That's something that's hooked up and pulled out. So if it's there for a few weekends, whatever the event may be, I don't know. That's none of my concern. The thing is, I want to leave it healthy enough where it's not restricting those who are able to move it, because let's not forget, you're not going to spend days and days and days building structure around something you're going to take out in 21 days either, right? So this is going to be a pull in, pull out type of affair, and it gives them a reasonable amount of time to do whatever event or whatever the thing may be. That's all I'm looking at. I want to keep it as free as possible, so to speak, right? So, and this way we're still not going outside of the realm of even what the Crown allows.
Yeah, so again, ultimately, it is going to be at the direction of council. So you get to, as council, get to decide what you think is reasonable and fair use. So again, there's a difference between what we're proposing for permanent on vacant properties, and for the temporary ones, this is where there's already a dwelling on it, and it's really meant to accommodate temporary guests coming in and how long they should stay. So we're not really talking about I think the same situation that you're talking about for Crown Land, where people are bringing in their trailers and setting up 4 of them together. So the bylaws are really, I think, looking at different things. But it did bring, like, as you were talking, it did the scenario that could realistically happen, and I think we should consider it as well, is obviously a large part of the culture of Renfrew County, and a lot of people do hunt out of trailers, and including a provision saying where a trailer is used as a hunt camp or for the period of, providing an exemption or allowance for a number of trailers that are used exclusively for hunting purposes, or when they're used for hunting or fishing purposes, having another exception like that.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm getting at, right? Because a lot of people do set them up, right? And they are, hunting season starts in October for deer. If you're a bow hunter, it starts the first of October, and it from some areas within Bonature Valley 59, it ends in 15th of or 29th or the 30th of December, 15th on the other side of Highway 41. But it's a 4-month span, and there's different uses and at those times of the years, whatever. But exactly, you're bringing up some very good points of where we can limit and what we. There's a lot to take in here again, Bruce.
So through you, Chair, if I may, it could include expanding on the definition of what that temporary use is. So saying, if you have a property that is less than 25 acres. I'm just taking a number out of my top of my head. Please don't hold me to it. You can do these things are going to be at the discretion of council. But for that temporary use, if you have a single detached house, we're talking about the first one that we were talking about was really meant to have when you have visitors. So you have a house and you have visitors coming over. and they are temporarily staying in a RV, whether it's yours that you are like as a property owner, you have an RV that you might be storing in your property, you want to bring it out and have your guests stay in it, or if it's for my in-laws have a big RV and sometimes they'll want to come over to our house and they're traveling through and they want to stay for a couple of weeks or something like that and there. So I don't think that that type of use is what we're trying to provide, that flexibility to allow for on that temporary basis, saying, temporary, visitors visiting a dwelling or that, whether it's a cottage or out in the rural area, or maybe look at the village areas. What is that reasonable expectation of, allowing occupation of an RV temporarily? And then some other situations that we can look at, you have a large acreage, say we could pick a number, say like 50 acres or 100 acres. If you have a 100-acre property or more during the hunting season, you're allowed to have X number of trailers to being seasonally occupied during that hunting season. You can look at different exceptions like that.
Well, and the reason why we really have to watch, because I've actually had people tell me they've watched their neighbors with binoculars because they couldn't get close enough to them and they were mad at them as well. So there is that type of aggression out there. And I'm serious, guys. I mean, really, really, people find a way to get mad at somebody for no reason, and I don't understand it. But anyway, we definitely have to take that into consideration when we're making these rules, because if we have the rule in place, there will be somebody to challenge it, and they will record it and they will document it. So we better darn well make sure that this is done right.
Get it right.
Absolutely. Brent?
So I guess just so I fully understand, so be it 30 days, 45 days, it's obviously discretion of council anyways. But for, I guess sorry, I'm just trying to think of. So for example, if you have a temporary property and we're classifying it as a trailer as well, so then if it's just stored on the property, be it one, it doesn't make a difference. So be it on as an ATV trailer, boat trailer, doesn't make a difference. It's more on the temporary occupying it.
It's on the temporary occupying. The time when storage becomes an issue is really if you have a really small lot and your neighbors are really close and you know what I mean, then we really don't want you storing like 10 RVs. So
and then I guess my other question is, it's more so on the notification. So for example, so say we enact 30-day or 45, obviously enforcement's difficult, but the thing is does that 45 days is enacted pretty much when the township is made aware of it and a complaint's been made? Or is it made as if someone had to take a picture of an individual saying they're on someone else's property? Like, at what point is that technically 30 to 45 days gets enacted? Is it once what township is notified of a complaint?
So what I would say from an administrative standpoint, from like never mind RVs, but any complaint that we receive in this office, right? So we receive a complaint. I'm saying that so first of all, if you're complaining that somebody's staying in an RV on the property and the 45 days, let's say, hasn't passed yet, well then I don't know why you're calling me, because your neighbor's in compliance. So you're saying to me it's been 46 days and these people have been occupying this trailer for 46 days and you were supposed to be gone 24 hours ago. I'm going to say, okay, thanks very much for the complaint, and I'm going to send a letter to the resident, to the property owner, and say, we've received a complaint that, you've had somebody occupying a temporary trailer on your property for 46 days. The maximum amount of time allotted is 45 days in a calendar year, so you're not in compliance with the zoning bylaw, further action will be taken if you don't remedy this. And see, let's say the person leaves and they're like, oh, sorry, I didn't know that, wasn't aware of it, because I get that sometimes where people they just don't know. Okay, that's fine. I've told you, now you know, you're fine. So let's say the next summer comes and I get the same complaint comes and I'm like, okay, but now you knew the rules, right? So I think it can escalate or it can change, or sometimes I'll get a phone call and they'll explain what happened. And maybe sometimes it's a perfectly reasonable explanation for what's going on. And then the complainant calls me back and I say, no, well, this is what actually happened. Like maybe the person stayed there, maybe the trailer's been there for 46 days, but you know what? These people stayed here for 2 weeks. then nobody was there. Now somebody else has been there for a week. I don't know what the reasoning is, but it is a bit of the honor system. And yeah, if you're gonna say, well, that's not true, and I have evidence of this further, well, then that's fine. We can move forward and we can enforce it. But at the end of the day, I think most people do comply with the bylaws that are there and that are being enforced, and they're not trying to go out of their way to not do something. And if they did want to, so let's say I do want to have a trailer that's occupied for a longer period of time, but I have a reason. There's a reason why it is that way. Then we have processes that they can go through. We have minor variance processes. We have temporary use agreements. So maybe there's a reason, and maybe there's a process for you to fix this so that you're able to do what you need to do for whatever reason it is. Maybe your mother-in-law's house burnt down and she has nowhere to live. And so she's living there until they rebuild her house, and yeah, she's going to be there. So then, okay, well, that has to go to council. You could get a temporary use bylaw. There might be an agreement for a certain period of days for a certain person. Maybe she could live there for a year, and maybe that's okay. Although that would be more of a permanent than a temporary, because it would need servicing. But there are sometimes circumstances where we might receive a complaint, but whatever the resident is doing is perfectly reasonable. So I wouldn't count the days necessarily on when I received the complaint or when the person said they were there. I would look at it, I would notify the person and say, I don't know if you're aware, but this is the rules and you can't do this. So, don't do it again, basically. And if you do it again, well, then, we're going to have a problem.
We'll tell you again.
Yeah.
Mayor Murphy?
Well, then you might get a visit. Yeah.
Jen, go ahead.
I totally agree. I think that this adds, I used the term before, the honor system. I think that's how we have to go with it. But I think between Bruce and Annette, thank you so much. I think we're going down a path that won't cost our ratepayers an arm and a leg, that we will be able to defend it. And I think that whether it's 30 days, 45 days, 21 days at a time, we can sort out those details later. But I think this in principle is the right road to be going down at this time. So I just wanted to thank you.
Any other questions?
No, really, the only clarification for next time would be just on an understandable the reasonable enjoyment of property for for the lot size for RVs, and what would actually fall under, say, the new OP or anything of that nature, just to make sure it's consistent. Just because that's obviously been what everyone's understanding has been for the last, since amalgamation, probably much and prior. So the thing is we're also taking away people's rights that they've originally had with their properties, and it's not something I think we should get in the business with. And that's why I want more of a clarification, I guess, or an understanding, because I don't want to take anyone's the enjoyment they already had on the property. They've already had enough sacred rights taken away. I don't think we should add to it. So it's more just clarification on what would make the most sense.
Yeah, and I think that's why we wanted to make sure there were avenues, because there are exceptions to every rule, and there are, things that are more reasonable than others. So I think we were looking for a baseline, and, council's still gonna have a chance to look at that when it's in draft form.
No.
And make changes to that. There's still, but we just needed some baseline to get some foundation to start from. Because we didn't even have that to bring forward something to present for council to go, yeah, we like this clause, we want this one changed to that. We weren't even at that point yet, but I feel like we're getting there today,
Well, it's open discussion, right? And that's what we need to do. One other thing, Bruce, I would like to add is with the hunting provisions, if we go that avenue, let's remember now there is a spring bear hunt in certain areas as well, and there's also spring turkey hunting. So if we can put in, not saying I'm supporting it yet or not, but this is just basically a brainstorm event right at this particular time, because we need to know options as we're discussing, right? Definitely anybody that's using anything for hunting purposes, I really on rural land, I really don't think that we should be, we have to provide exemptions for those as well, because let's remember these seasons can last a long time, and they don't need to be monitored, so to speak, for using them as such. Because even with our noise bylaws here in Bonnechere Valley, if you are in the forestry business, you are exempt from our noise bylaws throughout the evening. And there has to be exemptions in it, right? So we have bylaws for noise up until a certain time, but if your noise is generated due to forestry within the municipality of Bonnechere Valley, it is not applicable. You know, so there's certain things we have to still let carry on with the usage of this stuff, and we want to make sure that those who need the exemptions are totally exempt. Is that possible in your opinion, Bruce?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. So the township, we can come up with some examples and some provisions, and it's finding again that balance. So of, for example, just saying an outright blank exemption for any trailer that's being used for hunting purposes is exempt from these provisions. I don't think that necessarily would be a good idea, because that opens the door to that same situation where, you know, somebody has a dwelling, they pull in their trailer and say, oh, I'm using it for, I'm hunting out of it, even though it's a half acre on Golden Lake. So it doesn't, I don't think that meets the spirit of what you're talking about. So it's coming up with those provisions and saying those qualifications, saying, you know, if you meet the certain standards, say you have 100 acres, then yes, you can have.
But the thing is, what we have to also as a council try to avoid, because you can't afford a 100-acre lot. And what happens if you have because let's be realistic here. It's price. Our real estate has priced itself out of the reality of so many residents in this municipality in the last 2 years that they're not able to obtain chunks of property in excess of sometimes a half an acre lot, Bruce. And you got to realize that they get this half an acre, right, or whatever. And I know the vacant land one, but the thing is, that might be their point of stay at night to come back to and hunt on Crown land, or other farmers let them hunt on their next door property, or whatever it may be. And I really don't think it's up to us as a council to question the individual on whether they're using it for hunting purposes at that point in time. If they say they're using it for hunting purposes, I would be totally acceptable as to it. Hey, that's good for you, because we can't be going down every rabbit hole for everybody's individual use. But I do think that this council needs to have exemptions for those people if we choose to enforce any kind of restrictive law.
So yeah, my only point to that would be that if you were to provide such a wide-ranging blanket statement, such as long as it's used for hunting purposes, it would erode the spirit of the bylaw in its entirety, to the point where you wouldn't be able to enforce it if you wanted to, or someone would just have to say, yep, I'm hunting out of it, and the township would lose any potential recourse to actually enforce that bylaw if that scenario occurred. So, for example, somebody did bring in a trailer and it created an issue with their neighbor, and they were looking at the township to enforce that bylaw, saying, hey, look, my neighbor is using this trailer, it's not appropriate, the lot's too small, or whatever that reason. The whole reason behind these bylaws is to be able to enforce it if needed. And so putting a provision in there, like if it's used for hunting, it's exempt. That would erode the enforcement ability of that bylaw, and would not really meet the spirit or the intent of the plan policies that are in place.
But we could put something in where it says you could use it for 30 or 45 days in a calendar year, and an additional 30 or 45 days if for hunting and fishing purposes.
Or yes, or put in those provisions, like come up with other criteria of saying where, like what more a clearer definition or expectation, like really define what that spirit of that intention is. So people who are legitimately using it for hunting and fishing, that they'd be allowed to do that. So finding that balance and finding that wording. I don't have the perfect wording right off the top of my head for you, or that perfect solution to meet everybody's intent, but you know, it's all part of the process, I think. Discussion and having that understanding of what is the goal of the township here. What do we really want to accomplish? What do we want to allow? What do we not want to allow? Is it, as you said, is it defensible? Is it enforceable? Is it defensible? And really, is it reasonable? And so trying to answer all those questions and really coming up with a solution that works for, you know, it's not going to work for everybody. We know that there's going to be people who on both sides of the issue. We're probably not going to be happy at the end of the day, but it's trying to find that appropriate balance that for the most people in the township, what is that appropriate provision? And
So
so,
we will put a provision in there for exemptions for hunting and fishing. We'll try and find some wording that's out there, and then
Yeah.
we'll bring the draft to council, and we'll have to see what we can do with like.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but we'll definitely add it into what we have.
Okay, guys, I think we beat that one around quite often here
Well,
today.
I think the gist of the whole thing is we gotta get it right.
We got to get it right. No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bruce. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here for us for our questions and answers. And my God, you never know what 5 people can throw at you in a few minutes. So we appreciate that for sure.
thank you very much. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Take care.
Thank you, Annette. Was there anything else?
No, that's great. So we've got good direction going forward for the different types and some provisions. The exception for hunting and fishing, we didn't have that in, so we'll find some wording about that, and then we can review that draft as well. So I think we're definitely moving forward to actually being able to develop the clauses for council to review.
Yes.
And I'm, not saying that council's not gonna review and think of something in the meantime and go, ooh, we should add
Absolutely.
this, or, oh, you know what, so that's, but it gives us a really good baseline, so I appreciate council's time on that and Bruce's time on that. And the only other comment I'm gonna make is Jason has to leave for an appointment shortly. He is
Yep.
on here now, so.
I will
don't
do
know who
Jason
was
first.
next. I don't know who was next
Darrell
in
was
line,
first,
but-
but I'm sure Darrell will be fine. Darrell's usually very
I
quick.
think Daryl's already been in and out.
Okay.
He's on there, so hopefully Daryl will hang out, and wait for us.
Okay. Hi, Jason. How are you feeling?
Good. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. So, we have been approached by another supplier for diesel fuel and propane, and we are going through the reviewing prices and at this time. So we would like to just mention to council, we're definitely going to look at this and see where it can help us out if it can in any way. Price of fuel is definitely going to be going up, and any savings we can definitely get will definitely help everyone out in the future for sure. I have also been in contact with 3 dredging companies for Lake Clear. We have a few steps that we have to proceed with beforehand. We need to do a water intake study, species at risk, crown land work permit, and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So there's quite a few steps that we would have to go through before we could even start or think about doing anything up there.
Go ahead, Jack.
On that comment there, Jason, so these companies, they're not gonna be responsible for this. We're gonna be taking on the environmental assessment prior to getting these companies involved, I guess, because this is not something that they normally provide unless you're gonna single one of them out correctly.
That's right. Yes, Jack.
So we, with that, do you have contracts in mind for that? Or you just do who to contact, like both? of them?
Yes, I do. I do have, you mean for the studies, Jack?
Yes, for the studies.
Yes, I have the links to go on to, and that's just, we got to go through and get the paperwork and check everything out, see what else is needed, and then we can proceed.
Yeah, you'll have to get some person to come in and do your water testing and sampling and stuff. It's just, there's people that we've used before. So when you come to that point, maybe you can give me a call and we'll talk about that. So that,
Yes.
you have people that have worked with that type of environment before. It usually goes a little easier.
So have we talked to the landowners where this is going to be done through?
No, we haven't.
Because some of them have approached me and they're not really in favor of it, so.
All right.
I guess my question would be, so what, so if we don't dredge it, like what time frame are we working with? So like, what's the worst case scenario or the negative if we don't start looking at dredging now versus in a couple of years, or like what's the realistic time frame we're looking at? Like, when was the last time it was dredged, I guess?
Yeah.
It was
but-
done,
Okay, go ahead, guys.
it was done in the 50s.
50s, yeah.
So like even doing this, it's not like it's gonna get done in the next year or so. There's
No,
still
no, and I
studies and everything, and the worry that we have there is if the water can't get out of the lake, then you're going to have more erosion and pushback of Lake Clear Road, right? That's,
Yes.
the town spent a lot of money
Mhm.
putting that in there, and we just want to, make sure that the water has capability of getting out. And that's, until we have somebody come in and do analysis, we really don't know how much dredging, if any, is going to solve the problem or not.
So Jason, I guess with the rehabilitation, we did the Lake Clear Road, so then the dredging pretty much is gonna end up preserving that asset longer is kind of the purpose.
That's right, and then we wouldn't have as many issues as what we've been having with, downstream. It would definitely get the water out to a level where, it would be more suitable for the lake itself. Keep everyone happy with the water level.
So then, I guess, is it realistic then, is this most likely gonna be like, have enough time frame to bring it to a budget for us to do the studies this year, like?
Well, I'm gonna find out to see what the costs are to do any of these studies. Jack, you might know a little more about it. Is there any cost to do these?
Like the cost to do the studies, yeah, there's definitely gonna be a cost, and it's how depth study that you want to do. And that you'd have to rely on some input from your 3 companies that you are in touch with. They're gonna want a certain parameters that have to be determined. So once you have those parameters established, then you go to a firm and they'll give you a cost associated to determine these parameters. So
Okay.
like I said, we've used people before on that, and between myself and Sean Cameron would be able to give you some direction on where to go, and we can talk about that offline.
Sounds good, Jack. Thank you.
I think we better have your ear to the ground looking for money too.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing, right? Yeah.
See if there's any grant money out there.
That Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Jason, the only question for the fuel sourcing, were we looking at a long-term contract for that? Like a multiple year or just 1 year to get us by, or what were the thoughts on that?
It could be a multiple year, depending on how much savings there are right off the bat, but as of what I'm looking at right now, it's pennies.
Okay,
So with this dredging, is that going to increase the flow into Hertz Creek then and not along the way too, after, like, say, in the springtime and the runoff, and then actually a tributary into the Bonashire River, which in turn provides more? Okay, we got you.
It'll also
Yes.
give you more circulation and flip over and then clear too.
Yes.
Do you think, Jack, there might also be a barrier between Little Lake Clear and Lake Clear?
Where is this dredging? Do you have points in mind, Jason?
Yes, actually, Merv, it is in between the 2 lakes where the problem is with the silt and the sticks and stuff. So it's roughly about 800 meters by, on average, say 15 meters wide.
Well, I thought maybe there's problems further downstream as well.
Do we know how deep the dredging really?
We would have to go at least 3 meters, give or take, maybe a little less.
12 feet is good enough for my math.
Okay.
Okay,
Any questions for Jason on that topic? Any more? No? Okay. Okay, Jason,
That's all I have.
Thank you.
have yourself a good afternoon.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Take care. Is Darrell on the line there yet?
There he is.
Hey, Darrell, thanks for
Sir.
waiting patiently.
No problem. Okay, we've been mainly working on our reports from last year, so that's been our main goal for the month, but we've been split up, taking a week on and a week off for the last 3. So now we're gonna go back, starting yesterday, we're gonna go back all together again. We're starting to get a few calls on frozen water lines. They haven't been real bad yet, and hopefully we can control them. There was a few people that from previous history that we notified and asked them to run their taps just because it's been so cold. So that's pretty good. Sewage isn't bad. We got our mumps done for the ministry, and I got my 4th quarter for the environment. And the only other bump I guess I have on the road is our heater blew up at the geotube building sometime between Thursday evening and Monday morning. So there's quite a mess. So we're going to be doing that for the next week, probably just tearing it apart and redoing the piping inside. Everything froze, water, chemicals, and sewage. So anyway, other than that, I don't think the pumps are going to be okay. So
In the future, Darrell, is it maybe worthwhile looking for a budget item to have an alarm at a certain temperature? that
Yes.
Notifies us of this situation, maybe?
that's
for our
right.
Budget.
We do have 2 heaters in there, but they actually both laid down.
Oh, boy.
So
Well, it can only improve, I guess, Daryl, so.
Well, Friday night
yeah,
was
that's right.
very cold. I have heaters in my truck, and even they usually never have any problems to 40 below, and they were starting to act up Friday night as well. So it definitely
that's
got
right.
really cold for sure.
Yeah. All righty, that's it for me.
Thank you, Darrell.
Thanks, Darrell.
Thanks, Daryl.
Okay, thank you.
And now, Annette, you said Dave was not available today?
No, he was gonna do his best to get on, but
That's
he's
fine.
understaffed today, so I don't see him in the waiting room. I'll just take a quick peek again.
We're-
So I'm gonna say he's not going
Okay.
to make it, but you have his report, and if
That's
there
right.
was any, I can give you summary if you want, or if you've all read it and you
Yeah.
have questions, let me know, and I'm happy to take them back to the chief and
No?
give you the answers.
Anybody have any questions for Dave to come forward to? No?
That was straightforward.
Everything looked good to me.
Okay, he didn't get anything back from the contractor yet on the addition, but he is working on collecting other information from other municipalities, so we're not, completely without information, but he's still working on that.
Perfect. Okay. Correspondence 8, AMO watch file. Anybody have anything to add to that? No, okay. Correspondence B, I'm sure we're going to talk about this one.
Yeah.
Number 1, Township of Admaston Bromley, Animal Control Services, and Animal Shelter Services.
Do you want me to just talk about it?
If you wouldn't mind,
Okay,
I knew
so-
that one was going to be discussed.
So here's the issue is that, the upper end of the county lost, a dog shelter. I think it was in the city of Pembroke, but it could have been in Laurentian Valley or another municipality. And so everybody was sort of left without anybody to service dogs that were running at large. So BV stepped up back in the day and opened up a facility. And, we had 8 partners that were, really excited to jump on board and be a part of it because they had nowhere to turn to. So that's what we did. Unfortunately, as time goes, things need repairs, things have to be maintained, prices go up. So it's become more and more expensive to keep our shelter going. And, you know, we have been struggling. And so as you know, we had that discussion and we did send out a letter to all of our partners to say, you know, and we had a partner already leave us. So we said like, we need to up these fees because we don't want the residents of Bonter Valley covering other municipalities' dog issues. So I have only heard back from the one so far as I've brought forward. So everybody else will be getting the increased bill as of February, other than Beth Brumley. I haven't heard back from anybody else. I don't know what the right move is. If we were to close shop and try and find somewhere else to go, we are leaving our other 6 partners now, basically out, like who have been contributed and didn't, to the best of my knowledge, have not blinked an eye at the increased fees and clearly still want us to stay in the business. So we're kind of leaving them hanging if we walk away as well. I'm not saying that that's the right or the wrong decision, but I mean, I think this question is, we don't have a choice. They've given us the termination clause. They've asked for a 30-day as opposed to a 90-day. So they don't want to pay for the remaining 90 days. They want to be out within 30. I think we didn't agree to that with Norfolk Going Workforce. Makes it pretty hard for us to agree to that.
Yeah.
No, the clause is the clause.
So I think it's a similar response of, look, if another partner comes on board and can take over your fees, then for sure we will. But if nobody else comes over to take over the fees, that's the budget, that's how we built it, and you're gonna get billed in 90 days. So I'm happy if council wants me to look for another service to provide it. If council does want to get out of the business, we have a good account running, we've got a good employee running it. But I do think we leave our other partners in the lurch as well. And I don't know how many of them will be contacting us. Like I said, this is it. The only one that I've heard from. Nobody else has contacted me to say they're interested in getting out. Maybe they were, and maybe they found out they can't go anywhere. I don't know. So that's.
Mervyn and Jack?
They're just wondering, do you have any idea what the other kind of groups are charging that the Admas and Brahman is going to compared to our prices?
So they're a lot less. Lot less. However, they don't have, like, they're not gonna be able to take us all. So even if I did request that facility to take us on, I'm not saying they would be able to take us on. And if they could take us on, I doubt that they could take all 7 of us, like this, our 6 partners and us.
Yeah.
So someone's got to look after the dogs in this area that are running at large.
Sure.
I'm not saying it has to be us, but that's the reality
We're
of the
back to where we
situation.
were when we got into this.
I know. So, I think the direction I need, I've got for Admas and Brumley, I'll tell them the same thing that we said to North Alberta. And as far as this issue going forward, if nobody else jumps ship, then, it's a budgetary item. We can talk about it at budget time if that's for what council wants to do. So I don't know.
The other organization, maybe after they get into it for years, put up their prices. I'll say, hey, what's going on here?
Well, that's,
We estimated too low.
yeah.
That's
Hi,
what-
Jack.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna touch on, and that all we can do is go forward, and when we get the budget, we'll have to see where we're at and how far down we are, or what we have to do to
Yeah.
keep the services and keep it within line that their township residents are on the tax for it, or on
Yeah.
the bill for it, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's just where we're at.
And that's as far as I'm willing to commit to is till our next budget meeting.
Okay.
So that's, we'll have to definitely have a good discussion on it at that point in time for sure. Anybody else have anything on that?
Mayor.
Oh, Mayor Murphy, sorry.
No worries. And we have to remember that AB dropping out also creates another budget pressure for the other members. So the increase we told them could in fact be a bigger increase, and an increase, as Jack just said, on our taxpayers' bills. So definitely, I think on February 17th, we are going to have a very serious conversation about whether this is a service we can and will continue to offer.
Thank you, Jen. Anything else on that piece of correspondence? Is there any other correspondence from correspondence B that we would like to discuss? Okay, we're going to move along, and Mayor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank Mr. Chair, could we take a 5?
Sure.
I need some water before I begin this report.
Oh, due to the time constraints, just kidding. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Murphy, welcome back. Perfect. Oh, I have no volume here.
She's on mute.
You know, the,
You're on mute.
Epic fail. My
You also
internet's a
want the
bit
drinks?
wobbly. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. So in the last 2 weeks, I've had 7 meetings plus 2 full days at the Roma Convention that I'm going to give you an update on. On January 20th, we had a meeting with the Premier, Minister Clark, Minister Bethlen Falvey, Minister Elliott, Solicitor General Jones, and Dr. Moore about the plan for Ontario's reopening. And to their credit, yesterday we reopened in sort of a stage 2. The rapid tests are a big problem. We're waiting on more of those. There are going to be new portals opening for rebates for our businesses, and that was great news. I put that out to several of our business owners that have had to shut down. Roma, huge success. AMO came out with an 8-point call to action for the province. Municipal fiscal framework. Number 2 was economic recovery. Number 3 was climate change. Number 4 is social infrastructure, infrastructure and transit. Number 5, and these are in no particular order. Number 5 was broadband and connectivity. Number 6 was health and human services. Number 7, which is near and dear to my heart, is the mental health and addiction issues we are seeing. And number 8 was affordable housing. I did attend community safety and well-being plan plenary session. It was quite interesting. My question to the panel was, the original mandate was to reduce 911 calls, and they could not answer that, nor did they deign to answer it, and Annette can attest to that. The scope of these plans have gone way beyond 911 calls, and realistically, us having one for our detachment would mean that they would have 8 different community safety and well-being plans. I don't think that's efficient use of taxpayers' money. The EOWC priorities for this year are the Ontario health teams and government representation, affordable housing, huge message throughout the conference, and the long-term care homes. Annette and I had delegations with Minister Clark and Minister Bethlen Falvey. Minister Clark, we spoke to him about the labor shortage, another huge theme at the conference, and the idea of bringing back the municipal internship program to encourage our youth to get involved in municipal government in administrative capacity. We met with Minister Bethlen Falvey with regards to the connecting, or sorry, not the connection, different delegation, sorry guys. Minister Bethlen Falvey about ensuring that OSIF and the Ontario Partnership Fund were going to be permanent, and so that we wouldn't have to wait year over year to find out if we were going to have these. Roma came out with its plan. There were 28 points. I do have them printed out, and I can forward them to all of you. The biggest ones, though, were digital infrastructure and affordable housing. I attended an innovative housing plenary. Very, very, very interesting. The housing information gap in partnership with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. It's severe. It's really not good. I had a delegation with Minister Christine Elliott regarding public health funding. That went quite well. We also, Annette and I also had a delegation with Minister, help me out here, Annette. Minister Mulrooney regarding the Connecting Link program, and it was great. Our MPP, John Yakubuski, was in that delegation. We were talking about being questioned on why when the provincial plow gets to the borders of Eganville, they pick up their blade. absolutely not an efficient use, and I get asked about it every single year. This actually wasn't even on Minister Mulroney's radar, so she was quite pleased that we brought it to her. It used to be that the Connecting Link program included the maintenance and rehabilitation, but also the actual road maintenance during the winter. And when the Connecting Link program got shut down and then rebooted, that aspect of it was taken away. So I did a plenary on taking the pulse of health in Ontario. We talked extensively about Renfrew County VTAC, which is a model that the province is interested in using all over Ontario. So of course, no bricks and mortar, and talking about community paramedicine. And again, we talked about the impact of COVID on our mental health and addictions. So I am very hopeful that Minister Tabolo, who is the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, has received our proposal from our health team. And we are hopeful that we will have some answers in the next few weeks. And I also met with Hydro One regarding electronic vehicle chargers. And I think that meeting went very well. And we also talked about the energy retrofit programs. So throughout the township, LEDs, etc. I attended one on innovative housing solutions. Again, this was a bit of a different one. It was with Habitat for Humanity, Aboriginal housing, and home opportunities. One of the most interesting things in this plenary was the idea that we could build homes using 3D printers. I did ask what whether they would stand up to snow load or high winds. They couldn't answer that right away because, of course, the trial is going on in Windsor, but apparently they are 3D printing using concrete, which is very interesting. Opportunities for rural Ontario post-COVID, of course, again, housing, labor shortages, supply chain issues, paramedic services, just a whole lot in these plenaries, same messaging over and over and over again. We met with Minister Lisa Thompson, the Minister of Ag, Food and Rural Affairs, and there is a new stream of RED opening on February 7th. So that's good news. And also they changed the Ontario wildlife damage compensation from $30 to $50 for livestock. So the First Ministers Forum, a lot about labor shortages and apprenticeships, etc. The second was small business funding and growth, trying to make it easier on Ontario, on our small businesses. And people can go to ontario.ca/business, and it is a single window for grants and loans. Jack, I have some interesting news from Minister Todd Smith, who's the Minister of Energy. I can share with you an email that he sent with regards to what will be going on with our dam, but I was going to save that for an EGC meeting for El Presidente. I will forward that email to all of you. On January 26th, I attended County Council. In your packages today, I provided the slide deck from CNL because I thought it was a very interesting delegation and probably worth the perusal. Also, we are going to be doing the Ontario Winter Games, February 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of 2023, and the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th of 2023. And outside of that, I was involved in the EORN pre-budget as the chair of finance and audit for that organization. And I believe that concludes my mayor's report for these 2 weeks. And I will take any questions.
Any questions from the mayor?
Did everybody fall asleep?
Yeah.
Late in the afternoon. Snooze time.
Thanks for that, Jen.
A busy couple of weeks, but worth every single minute of it.
Sounds like it was very busy.
It was but it was so productive.
Good. So on to number 2, EGC update for myself. There was nothing brought to my attention that was of any. What have you got there, Jack?
Currently right now we have 2 units that are running. It's down, the month of January just finished, well, yesterday, and then so I got my generation readings compared to last year. We're down about 15% compared to last January. Probably the reason for that is we had a pretty dry fall last year, so we had most of the water got moved out of the system. So we're down a bit, but hopefully we continue to get the snow load that we have. If we get an increased snow load, we'll probably have a better freshet than last year. Last year, we only had a freshet that lasted for 1 week. Hopefully we'll get a 4 to 5 week freshet this year. The drawdown of Round Lake is being monitored by RPG, and it's on their weekly update is on their website, but they're following the drawdown that was approved of the logs, so that's going smoothly. There's currently right now 7 logs in Round Lake because of the low water. We couldn't remove any more, so but that still gives us ample storage for the spring of 13 logs. So we're in better shape than where we were without the drawdown. Without the drawdown would be around 10 logs. So we gained at least 3 logs in that neighborhood. Just touching on last year. Last year, we surpassed our last year's budget by, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5%. So we had even with poor freshet, we ended up meeting and exceeding our budget numbers of last year.
And let's say we got into the black.
Sorry?
If you got into the black.
Yeah, well, we succeeded our budget. Our budget has increased by over 10-15% because of the drawdown, and we were able to exceed that by another 6. So we had a good year last year. Any questions?
No. Thanks, Chuck.
Okay.
CNL update.
Mr. Chair, that was just the slide deck that I provided.
No, fine. I didn't know if there was any discussion on.
Unless anybody has any questions for me.
Okay, I guess we're gonna go to, so we can skip over 4 then? Or no, oh, number 4.
That's a
Or we'll
resolution.
come back tonight as a resolution. It's another funding opportunity that we're looking for to try and get funding for the meters, the water meters.
Replace the water
$500,000 project that we're trying to get funded. So
Number 5, comments for RE proposal for standards for care for dogs kept outdoors.
So, number 5, I added on to here because I do think this will impact our municipality, whether it impacts directly our animal control and our bylaw enforcement, or whether the enforcement of some of these new standards are going to fall to provincial agencies, which does look after the welfare of dogs. So we look after the control of dogs, so running at large, being a nuisance, that kind of thing. The provincial agencies look after actual welfare concerns, which this regulation or legislation does look like it is more towards welfare of the animals, but it does, in a rural setting, it definitely is going to put some pressure on our dog owners who, you know, may the dogs may be fine outside for longer than an hour. They may not need to be on a leash. They may have a large enclosed area. You know, their nails maybe a little bit longer than normal, but maybe that's okay because of their outdoor status. I don't know. I find that a lot of the provisions are very restrictive, and I don't know enough about it to know whether those are, you know, that they should be that strict. So it's open, I think, until mid-February for comments. And so what I'm looking for is some direction or some authorization to make comments on behalf of Montreal Valley on some of these things, and I can certainly share that around when I submit those comments.
Just wondering, did you run this past our individual who looks after dogs, and was there any comments or not?
No, because it really has to do more with the welfare of dogs, but absolutely, I will give Aunt Tammy a call and see if she has any comments regarding, you know, she may look at some of these and say, no, that does make sense in it. That is something that dogs do require in her experience. But she may also look at another clause and say, no, that seems like overkill to me. So that definitely I
Well-
would tap into her.
Well, one
expertise.
thing that we have to realize here, and I think Merv can elaborate to this, we all know that depending on the types of dog and the situation to what they are applicable to. Because in this area, we have everything from work dogs, i.e. hunting dogs, to purse dogs, to watch dogs, to farm animals type of dogs. And some dogs, they've got massive coats where they can't come in. I've got a German Shepherd with heavy hair, and he does not like being inside in the winter. We bring him in when it's cold, of course, you know, he gets to stay in, but he cannot wait to get outside and stay outside. Doesn't like being in. So for us to, you know, basically direct something along that line, you know, we really got to look at, you know, the massive scale of different types of dogs. And I think Merv had a question, and then Jen.
Well, I don't suppose you have enough detail yet. You said another agency looking after the welfare dogs, but the SPCA, but that used to be around, but they're gone.
Well, they're not gone. They have changed their mandate.
Yeah, because they got themselves into a lot of
Yes,
trouble
so,
with
yes,
foolishness.
but you're right, they don't look after the welfare of dogs anymore, but there is a provincial agency that now does have
Okay.
inspectors on the payroll that you can call a 1-800 number and report a dog welfare issue, and they will follow up and go from there. But we're out of that. But it still is, you know, it's still going to be somebody coming into our municipality and directing our residents as to what has to be done with the dog. And at the end of the day, there is still a bill to pay. It might not be coming from our, you know, tax levy, but it's coming from somewhere. So,
Yeah, somebody's got to pay for it.
yeah. So just want to make sure that it's reasonable and it's, the only thing that I like about it is it is very well laid out. They have every single section to say, do you agree with this? Yes or no? Comments. Do you agree with this? Yes or no comments? So I do appreciate that,
Yeah,
but yeah,
no, it's a pretty intense report. So that's where, like, council, if we do have any issues, we can go over it a little more and, you know, bring them to you. Jen, you had a comment?
Well, first of all, Tim, my pug heard your purse dog comment and she is very offended.
You know what I mean, though, Jen, and
Don't listen to Tim. Stella.
absolutely, some of them I wouldn't want to go.
It's a heavy purse dog.
Heavy purse. Well, Jen's got a big purse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Mine's
but
a
my,
first dog.
yeah, you have a purse dog too.
Yeah, right.
No, and that's the thing, right? Because we know a husky inside on a day like, you know, even today with an 80-degree house, it's more harmful to the dog's mental well-being, so to speak, than it would be outside in the snowbank where it's supposed to be. Not, you know what I mean, like there's so many variables of, you know, that with that, there's a lot of where it's open to interpretation, right?
and when we had our Maremma, we couldn't bribe him to come into the house.
No.
So I think my question to Annette is, what is our actual end game role in this? Because if it's going to be the province enforcing, what, I mean, I saw the report, but what are they really expecting out of the municipality?
well, I don't know that they're expecting anything, and I don't know that they're not expecting anything. They have, looked at the municipality to enforce certain animal issues, but we can call on the province when it's a welfare issue. But I mean, some of these provisions are talking about, you know, the size of housing, the material that the housing
Yeah,
is made
it
out
really
of.
gets
So
constrictive.
it starts to get very, very restrictive. And so I just wanted, they've opened it up for comments. So, I'd like to take a bit of a rural lens to it and say, you know, this doesn't really make sense in our area. If that's something that committee council would like the township to do, but I certainly wouldn't make comment on legislation without first getting authorization to do so. But
I just feel like this might become a download, and that's something that's a road I don't want to go down.
Yeah.
Because every time we get something like this from the province, it seems that it's a slippery slope down to yet another download to the municipality, and becomes our responsibility. And we know enforcement of all kinds in our municipality it's really hard to do. So I'm just cautioning council that we really need to keep our eye on this, because I don't want to see this become a municipal problem.
Agreed.
And we do have until March 7th. So
Okay.
I thought it was mid-February, but I am reading here,
Yeah,
please
it's
provide
March
the ministry
7th.
with your comments no later than March 7th. So we do have some time to provide comments, on some of these.
Maybe we can bring it back
Bring
in the next meeting.
I was just gonna say that,
Sure.
we'll bring it back
Or with our
to see if
comments,
we have
yeah.
comments on it,
Sure.
or if we feel like supporting or anything along the line inside this.
Sure, I'll have a draft ready for you.
Thank you, Annette. Okay, request for some sunshine coach, bylaw required, of course, everybody in favor again?
We do it every year.
I was just gonna say, all in favor, catch your hands, everybody unanimous there. I guess we don't do that right now. Anyway. Jen's like, no, we don't do that right now. Okay, sure.
But good to know now, so
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
have
yeah.
time to pull it
That's right.
for tonight.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
good to
yeah,
know.
no, we're good on that one. Number 7, zoning options. Same deal.
I think I have all the direction I need unless there is something else in particular that council wanted. And I mean, feel free if you think of something, you go home tonight and you're like, oh, I wanted to add this one more thing. There's lots of time to still be drafting it and bringing it forward. So,
Yeah, we get a chance to beat it up again.
yeah, absolutely. A few more times, I think.
Jen and Jack?
I think that there were a lot of points that were brought up today that I found very interesting. I couldn't agree more about hunting. I mean, boy, if somebody wanted to pull an RV onto our land during turkey season, come ahead, because those guys, they freak me out. So I think that there do need to be a few exceptions, although I did understand what Bruce was talking about diluting the message of the bylaw or the zoning at all. But I want to sit on this, and Annette, you'll probably hear from me, because I definitely think that there are opportunities here to be able to defend the bylaw, but at the same time allowing some amount of compromise.
Just for the record, the mayor gave me permission to hunt on her property.
No, I was just thinking, Jen, it's funny you said that. I had a friend from Ottawa text me like a month ago. I was like, hey, do you know anyone that we can turkey hunt? I'm like, oh, perfect. I know the perfect individual.
You know those things fly, eh?
We do.
They're-
We
yeah,
do,
they're-
And- and they-
Quite aware of that.
Yeah,
I've been stuck in my house. This is such an admission. I have actually been stuck in my house because there were like 50 of them on our laneway, and I'm afraid of birds at the best of time, but those things they're scary.
I have 2 bow hunters that would love the opportunity to go on your property and get them.
Be careful of the 2 horses outside of that. Come ahead.
Well, horse meat just as good.
Hey, okay. So now
Protein is
the
protein.
And don't
And
tramp on the dog
horses.
accidentally.
Yeah.
And don't tramp on the dog accidentally.
On the zoning thing that we were talking about, last time we were talking about briefly about 2 different bylaws. Have we deviated from that, like between
One for Lake Clear.
Lake Clear and one for the rest?
Yeah, no, we can
Okay.
put a section in.
Yeah,
So we can't do 2 different bylaws, but yes, Lake Clear could have its own section, if that's what council wants to do.
well, I'm just wondering where that was, because we did
Oh.
talk about it. And then the other thing on that, I'm just wondering if this is the time or not, if we could maybe involve the ministry or make a request for the ministry.
We
about-
certainly can. I mean, I
about-
don't think the ministry is going to.
Clarify
give-
that, probably not.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, we can open discussions with
Open
the
discussion
ministry.
with them.
That's fine, on the sensitive lake issue, or, that's no problem. That's going to take time, probably have to hire studies and so on, and then even if the ministry does come on board, then we have to file an official plan amendment and go from there. So that's probably gonna take, I don't know whether it's gonna take longer or just as long as our zoning bylaw. It's a tough call. But my understanding on having a separate section for Lake Clear is I didn't think that council supported that.
No.
Okay,
No, But
okay.
I
That's
just,
why it didn't come up,
No,
because
but I
I
just-
thought there was.
I
no
just
support
wanted
for
to
it.
know where that went,
Okay.
because that was discussed. Like, in my opinion, I don't support that, so.
Okay, it went away because I didn't think
Yeah.
anyone
Yeah.
was interested in looking at that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. But
We didn't
I'd
have two
like to,
bylaws.
I'd like to open up discussion with the ministry on that, the other information that we have.
okay. Is that what everybody would like to do?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think it's a great idea.
Sure,
Sure.
absolutely, Jen. Okay, so as everyone knows what's going on in the news today, and it's all over the place, I just want to say thank you
Going
to.
on, Tim?
What's going on? What's going on? As you all know, there was a convoy that happened and has taken place that on Friday night actually come through our little area, and a pile of residents went out Friday night and they stood outside in the 30 some below weather for hours and hours to welcome such an event to come through. And I just gotta say, you know, thank you to all those people that were involved in the support along the way, because there were a lot of people from our area there, and also down in Ottawa, a lot of Monasher Valley residents I've seen there as well. An overwhelming peaceful event is all I can say that whole thing has been. I was there all weekend, and absolutely incredible and amazing. And the big takeaway, Jen, and I'd like to hear what you have to say, but the repeated topic that always come up with discussion with people out there was their mental health. And if we all sit back and look at why this had happened, and no matter what side of the political spectrum you lie on, the mental health issue of what's going on in the last 2 years is absolutely, it's always the elephant in the room. And so many people came up to me and said that this movement with the Canadians uniting did more for their mental health than anything else that has happened in the last 2 years, because they've seen so many people get together on one particular thing. And there were people from British Columbia, from hey, we had Albertans shaking hands with Quebecers for the first. I'm telling you guys, it was overwhelming, and the amount of support on that alone, it can't be ignored. And a local business owner had come up to me, and I'm going to lead into the next part of my conversation. Had said, you know, the people need to see an end game. And what we seen last week solidifies that. There were hundreds of thousands of people down on the hill on Saturday and Sunday with the same drive. They just want to see an end game. And what had gotten so many people, whether they were double vaccinated, not vaccinated, triple vaccinated, there was all in the crowd, that what they need to see is a definitive end game from our provincial leaders, our municipal leaders, and our federal leaders. Because what has happened in the last 2 years, and it's creating a lot of issues, and people are very frustrated. And that was brought to me that the goalposts are always moving. First it's 70%, then 80%, and 90%, and they followed the rules, they're obeying the rules, and then they changed the rules. And that was the big thing that was brought to me, because we have to make decisions on a lot of this policy as well. Jen, would you like to say something?
I really would. So I want to say that this is the most divisive issue I think we've probably ever seen. But I do know that there were people outstanding in that -35 on Friday night. There were people that didn't necessarily agree with the protest, but agreed that our supply chain needed to be protected, that our mental health needed to be protected. And I'm glad that you called on me, Tim, about mental health. You guys know that, I've been sitting on this mental health and addictions table for, I guess, two plus years now. And it isn't going away, and it's not getting better. In fact, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And, one of the best things I heard about were, people in Ottawa that were exactly what you said, actually. Some were triple vaxxed, some were double vaxxed, some were not vaxxed. And it was more about, how do we keep this country running, and how do we keep our economy going? And again, I know that this is a really divisive issue, and I'm so sorry for those of you that were at the protest, the peaceful protest that turned not so peaceful because of a couple of bad actors. And I think, we saw people parking on the National War Memorial, absolutely unacceptable. I don't know what happened with the Terry Fox statue, but I did see two truckers actually washing him down, including, bird poop and that kind of thing. So I applaud those actions. Again, I don't know where. I think our province is trying to climb out of it. I think we've heard over and over and over again from Dr. Moore and the Premier and Christine Elliott that this is causing some major mental health issues. And so, yes, do we need an exit strategy? We absolutely do. Do I know what that looks like? I absolutely don't, because as we've spoken about so often, is that we are creatures of the province. And, I was asked over the weekend, when are we going to be allowed to skate again? And I said, oh, well, the arena will be open on Monday. And they were like, well, what about if we're not vaxxed? Which takes us right back to the discussion we had months ago, where, people are getting sick kind of no matter what. And I know that the vaccines are definitely slowing down the virulence and the morbidity of the virus, but we're still seeing hospitalizations, ICUs, and I wish I had all the answers. I get asked on a daily from our ratepayers, when is this going to end? When are we getting back to normal? If I had the answer, I would jump for joy. Well, maybe not now with my back like this, but normal times I would jump for joy. But oh my God, this whole thing has just been very, very, very stressful. And I don't know what to tell you guys. It's bad leadership to not have answers, but I don't have any answers.
So back to a few of your points there, Jen, as far as the, a couple of bad apples or something like that along. So in society, we always, hold the individual accountable. And also the organizers of that event had held any individual accountable. And if I could give you a background now, they have truckers guarding all of those things, because let's face it, you put 20,000 people in an area. You're not going to have all good people. We don't punish everybody for the likes of one. And the cleanest protest the police officers had said they've ever seen. The cleanest. They picked up the garbage and they organized it and they put it in the garbage bags. They're there with snow shovels, shoveling off paths. And the logistics of it were, and a lot of people aren't going to understand, the whole, especially if you've never been to Ottawa. And I've never did the downtown thing, but the thing is, there was always a live lane left open, with the exception of Wellington Street, where your place is to protest. So I was parked there and there was traffic. able to go both sides. Nothing was blocked off. Sometimes traffic gets traffic in the way, but there was always to be a lane open. Nobody was there and is there to hold the city hostage nor the residents. And I hope that the general public can kind of get through that. That's not the that was never the point, and I've never seen that really happen without, you know, other than some normal congestion at the time on the weekend. As far as it goes with the Terry Fox deal, they polished that, and it was also brought to my attention, the police officers had said, you know, they hadn't seen that monument that clean since it was put there. And the amount of food, the amount of outreach that they had given, the Shepherds of Good Hope is overwhelmed with donations. They can't take another thing. They said, no more donations, please, because we have nowhere to keep it now. They fed homeless at the time. I've seen so much positivity on this weekend. I was absolutely taken back by it. And it was just so incredible, so incredible. And that's something that is millions come down to the hill for that. So one thing that I think we as a municipality have to realize that's a lot of our residents were there as well. And to be cautious on certain governments by not adhering to their stand on what's happening in this. And I would like to be able to, with permission from council, do a letter to our premier and to our prime minister or whoever it may be, that if we have guidelines set in place, just to follow them. Because what the biggest thing was the people would say, we did what we were told to do, and now we're not allowed to keep going. Because they took 2 shots, they took 3 shots, and they're still in the same spot. But they were told a year ago that if you reach this goalpost, that this is good. And as leaders, we have to make sure we don't just keep moving them, or you lose the hope of the people. And that's why there was so much turnout on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And it was from all these people. It was never an anti-vax movement. It was, you know, we got to stop this somewhere, because you keep moving the goalposts, and you can't do that to a prisoner. You know, he knows when he's getting out. So if you think of what the mental health on the general population is, and that's what they're feeling. That was an overwhelming feeling in Ottawa. So,
Tim, can I just get clarity? I think for myself and for anybody watching this, can I just get clarity on what your expectation of this is? Are you saying, hey, Premier, you told us that when we got to 88% double vaxxed, that these restrictions would be lessened. When we got to 90%, these would be lessened. Hey, Prime Minister, is that the road you're going down? And I think before we sign anything, I think that we need appropriate verbiage. What you're saying is not, I don't want to be vaccinated. What you're saying is
no.
Okay, I'm just clearing it up for the crowd here. So I don't disagree with you, but I do think that the Premier did address it in the 21-day intervals, and Dr. Moore did give us some.
We heard 2 weeks from the start, Jen. We heard 2 weeks from the start.
Right.
Well, and we've heard now, once you get to this 40% right, was the first one, right? And so far right now, our Premier's word isn't worth the soil that's under my boots. And that's the problem, and that's why this has gotten to this level. And our Prime Minister's word is about the same thing. They've got to stay with what they say. And that's what's destroying the people of this country. It's bad leadership and not sticking to their word. Because you can only criminal that's in jail for so long, he's getting out in 2 years, and you tell him that he can't get out in 3 now, you're going to destroy the mental health of everybody in there. And all I want the council to do is say, look, if you guys give us a set of guidelines, adhere to them. Start putting some iron in your word. Because
All
you know,
right, so what,
they're destroying the
you're
system by doing what they're doing. And if they don't soon change it, there's not going to be any system left.
okay, so what you're looking for is a call to action from the
Yes.
Premier and the Prime Minister, just saying, give us the rules. We follow the rules, and we have been following the rules. We've been doing our part, not allowing people in our arena, et cetera. We've done all the rules. So if you're asking for a call to action, and I will ask Annette if she kind of got the gist, maybe Annette can put something together for us that all 5 of us can agree on as appropriate to go to each level of government, or perhaps are there 2 separate letters? Like, did the province say, I think the province said 90% and the Fed said 88%. I'm not sure. I would have to go back and look, but perhaps it's appropriate, same verbiage, but you've given us your mandates and we followed them. So can you give us an idea of not moving the goalpost once again?
Well, I think, I guess my comment on it is more, I guess, like, we're all gonna probably watch like the Super Bowl the next, whenever it is, the next week or 2 weeks.
13th.
Yeah, and the thing is there's gonna be a lot of people in the stands with really no restrictions. So like, the thing is like, we're all gonna be at home, and like, I guess everything, like, it's like, for example, it's like I know several individuals, the only reason they say they took the vaccination was to get back to normal, and they say they hit the 40%, the 80%, vice versa, and to see their kids play hockey. Well, we don't even have hockey. So the thing is like, are we gonna do another summer of no sports? When you look at it and say, Premier Mo and Mr. Trudeau, both got COVID, they're both fully vaccinated. And the thing is like, I think we just have to learn that everyone's got to accept to live with it. Like, I have a good friend, he had bad mental health issues from it and from COVID, and he's terrified to go to the grocery store. The thing is people have to live with what it is. And the thing is not going away, but the thing is, I think it's really sad to continue to hear that say like a 1.5-year-old hasn't really played with really a lot of kids his age, because everyone's scared to get their kids together or anything like that, or they just like, it's just like, you look at your from your speech pathologist or anything like that nature, like, I think the mental health aspect on it is very draining on a lot of people. And I think at some point the goalpost can't move. We've never opened up fully, completely at all for the last 2 years. And I think end of the day, I said, it's gotta be held to a standard. Like, everyone's like following the protocols that's in place, be it long-term care homes, be it municipalities or anything in the arena. Some of our residents can't even go to the arena or watch their kids play sports. So there's nothing right now. So the thing is what can we as council do to support it? And I think the letter is a great suggestion. I think we can look at it and review it.
And I think that if we're going down the road of mental health and addiction, then it would be smart of us to also include Minister Elliott as the Minister of Health and Minister Tibolo for mental health and addictions. I think that, this absolutely is on their radar, but maybe we need to pinpoint it that, again, we've done what you've said. You laid out the mandates, we followed the rules, and now we need some sort of end game. We need to know, and I mean, the Premier said it yesterday, we're just going to have to learn to live with this virus, which is such a shame. But I think that if we frame it in, please don't move the goalpost again, I think that will get some traction.
Jack, any questions or comments?
Well, I think the Premier has to look at something like what BC is doing. BC went out when it came down for lockdowns for the elderly, and the decisions made there definitely had more positive results than what we saw in Ontario and Quebec. BC is now talking about living with it and proceeding with opening up and dealing with the situation. I think if we could get something out of that from our premier, then the people would be more willing and understanding that he's not going to move things again. If this other variant pops up, oh my God, everything's all falling apart again because there's a new variant that was detected that's apparently 30% more effective than even Omicron, a variant of Omicron that was detected. And it seems like every time we're getting somewhere, a new variant comes in and they move the goalpost. Whereas with BC, it seems like they're going to go ahead and open up and try and learn to live with it. And if you see, like, if you look at the southern, or that's being done in the US, between the states that are restricting and the states that aren't restricting, the results of the people don't seem to be that different to warrant all the restrictions that are in place. So I think I'm in agreement with some sort of letter going forward to the premier and also to the prime minister they have to come up with some sort of end date and be willing to stick to the end date, because it is quite obvious that we're not going to get rid of this virus. It's going to be with us and we're going to have to learn to live with it. And that's just the way it is. People, it's like other viruses we live with, like, it's not like we're going to be able to totally remove it. So I'm in agreement with a letter of that sort. And it's, other provinces are doing it. Like I'm saying, BC is now in the process of doing something along those lines. So.
Murph?
Yes, well, I think we'd really like to see an end date too. That the businesses can open up, restaurants can open up.
And it was a local business owner that did bring that forward to me. And everybody is struggling. And like he said, we followed the rules, we followed what's going on, and they keep changing them. We have to have, because absolutely, we all know right now that this is never going away. I don't think it's ever going away.
And there may be another strain coming and another.
And it's going to happen. Take these valuable resources, invest them into your doctors and your nurses, get people back to work, get your hospitals up to the point where you can deal with pandemics. We've had a couple of years where they could have did that, and provide a little bit more to the municipalities for mental health addiction in the next little while, or mental health and addiction, and get us the help we need to help our residents. Because as I seen on the weekend, the only way we're going to get out of this is by uniting and coming together. And if that means the municipalities with the province, with the feds, we have to keep going but we've got to do this together, and we've got to get out of this. And the people have spoken. A lot of people have spoken. And just think if this was a summertime event going through where it wasn't minus 35, how many people would have been there? And that's what we have to grasp. And the people from our area alone, like, it absolutely amazing. So if that's not a wake-up call to anybody in politics right now, I don't know what ever will be. So I think we better.
Tim knows how to get anything he wants out of me as long as he says mental health and addiction.
Oh, come on, Jen, you don't think I know you that well, do you? So anyway. Any other questions on that, guys? Go ahead there, Annette.
Just one. So do you want me to draft something up and bring it back to the February 15th meeting, or am I drafting something up and just working with yourself and the mayor and getting it out?
No.
I'm fine either way.
15th? 15th is great.
We can send,
Okay. Yeah, it's not that far
No,
away. Yeah.
it's 2 weeks away and we'll have a better idea.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, and by then I might have some news from the minister about our Connect Well proposal for more mental health and addiction support in Bonnechere Valley.
it was absolutely amazing and complete strangers. So to give you guys a background, and we won't get into too much, but strangers would come up to me in my truck and they would tell me their stories. You know, they'd tell me their stories. They told me their stories all weekend long.
Yes, Tim, we
And-
saw you with the university students.
Yes, you know, and I'm like, my God, I can explain how that happened. They
Okay,
not-
please do, because all I could think of was, did your parents not teach you not to get into a vehicle with a strange man?
That was the atmosphere this weekend. That was the atmosphere. There was no fear. It was absolutely amazing. So I'm parked on Metcalf Street. And there's a car, we convoyed in because we were all staged throughout the city in safe areas where we weren't blocking traffic and everything was.
I'm still here.
Okay, no, that's fine. We were all staged and there's only so much room in Ottawa for so many trucks. And the last thing that anybody ever wanted was anybody to get hurt out of this event. So there was only so many of us allowed in at a time. And the conditions are to make sure that you've got roads up on both sides. So there was a little white car ahead of me and I'm stopped and we're all pretty well stopped now. We're up to the front of the line. And these two university students jumped out of the car and come up beside my truck and knocked on the door. And they said, "Excuse me, can we take a picture of you in your truck?" And me being the nice guy I am, I'm like, "Oh yeah, if you want to take a picture of me in my truck, you feel free and take a picture of me in my truck." And they run around and got into my truck and took a picture of me in my truck. And I kind of, what do you do at that point in time other than, hey, what are you here for and what are you doing, right? So that's how they ended up. And their mom and their grandma was right ahead of me. And they had told them, go back and see if that truck driver will let you, take a picture in his truck. And that's where they got onto the interview there and told me their stories. And one was double vaccinated, right? And one wasn't. And they just wanted to have the same thing, to let us know what we have.
Literally interviewing them, guys. For those of you that didn't see it, I highly recommend on a break that Tim shows it to you because it's pretty darn funny with him and these two university students.
No, but that was the whole atmosphere of the whole weekend was just absolutely positive, and I couldn't say it anymore. And anybody that took anything other than that away, they're doing it on purpose because 1.5 million people, and the police said we've never. Ladies come up to me and from living in the downtown core, asked me, where you are and where you're from. And I said, "Are you from Ottawa?" "Yes, we are. We've never seen such a peaceful protest as long as I've lived here." So if anybody has any questions on what's going on, go to Ottawa and check it out. I recommend that anytime.
Are you going back?
If I'm needed. Absolutely. There's so many people waiting to go in yet. It was so massive that I left Sunday night. There were others waiting to take my place because they drove from British Columbia and didn't get to see Ottawa yet. Because you couldn't block highways, and that's not what we're there for, right? We were there for a peaceful protest, right? So they were kept outside, and then whenever somebody would leave, they would give them another chance because you're not going to drive all the way from British Columbia and not get to see Parliamentville, and it's only fair to them too. So that was the whole part, and nobody ever expected it to get this massive. We didn't think that this was going to be that big. I don't think anybody realizes how big it is, so it's something else for sure. So with that being said, do you need any other clarification in it?
No, thank you.
Everything good? Can I get okay, so next meeting date,
February 15th
February 15th.
Not
Three.
Valentine's Day?
At 3 too?
at 3, yes.
Yep, 3 o'clock. And we have no media. And we don't have any closed sessions. So can I get a mover to conclude the meeting? Brent, all in favor? See you in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm gonna log out and log back in.